What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and this is one PC Sim Racer dude's opinion on Assetto Corsa Competizione, or however it's pronounced, in this first phase of early access. This isn't a review, it's just some opinions and some things I put together as the hype train has begun to leave the station. Chugga chugga woot woot. So let us begin. First, let's start with some of these questions that always come up with these early access titles, just so that way I don't have to answer them like 82 times in the comment section. Yes, you buy the game now, you buy the game once, and you get the whole thing and all the updates as it develops and all that stuff. For some reason, people don't seem to understand this is how early access works, even though this has become the norm within modern gaming. But anyways, you buy the game now, you get the whole thing. So in other words, if you're a fan of Assetto Corsa, the OGAC, as I'll be referring to it as, for the GT3 cars, and you want a title with more of a focus perhaps on the multiplayer side of things as well as the feature set, it's pretty much a no-brainer for you, because you're going to either end up saving money if you're going to pick it up after launch, or alternatively, you don't have that several month wait for the game to go back on sale for the price that you're going to buy it for today. There's currently no proper triple screen support or virtual reality support. VR support is listed as coming in the next early access update in October, according to the roadmap that they revealed. Triple screen support is noticeably absent from the roadmap that they produced a little while ago. However, the same was true with OG Assetto Corsa, because it didn't have it right out of the box, but they did end up adding it in later on down the road as things got more tidied up and all that stuff. I think they fully understand the importance of such a feature for a racing sim on PC, and I fully expect that that will be added in at some point. However, they haven't fully clarified and made a statement that they're going to be doing it. Speaking of that roadmap a little bit, just to kind of address some of the, the controversy, the negative opinions and stuff like that. Just my opinion on this. When it was initially revealed, I was pretty disappointed, as well as many other people out there. You know, you're basically looking at one car, one track being added, every month alongside the core updates, to the title as things go on and get closer to release. Which, when they've already gone ahead and demoed off like 3 or 4 cars that we're not going to be seeing, in the early access version for a couple months, it is kind of a little bit strange, to say the least. Same thing on the track side of things. However, I think, as more time's gone by, maybe there's a little bit of not wanting to bite off more than what they can chew, perhaps looking at this in a different fashion than the way the original Assetto Corsa kind of went down through its early access, and hopefully they can get things more refined. For example, a lot of this game is supposed to be developed around the multiplayer system and making that functional. GT3, obviously, you have a lot of different cars, but to get the cars to be equal or relatively equal to one another in terms of competition, that relies on balance of performance and getting that dialed in. So maybe it could be this thing where if you take it a little bit slower, we're going to get the data to them in a different fashion, because it basically ensures that every single time that a new car comes out, a new track comes out, everyone and their brother is going to fire up this game, flock to the new car because, ooh, new, shiny, and see, where things are stacking up and what adjustments need to be made. So that's just my opinion. That's just my thought on that. And, it is what it is. The end product is going to matter far more than how fast or slow they have produced content for their early access. So let's actually jump into the game itself here. Hey, did you know you can have rain, night, and pretty good graphics in a racing sim? I mean, don't tell that to a certain crowd out there, but yeah, it can be done. Here's proof. One of the points of a little bit of puzzlement, I guess I could say, regarding this title is the use of Unreal Engine 4 for providing the graphics. The physics from the Unreal Engine have nothing to do with anything, just to make it 100% clear. It's just the graphics, as we've already known. We've heard of other studios attempting to use the graphics engine and plug in their own physics into it to make their own thing. There's been several other projects out there that have been announced as trying to do the same, and for one reason or another, nothing has actually really come to fruition. This is the first one where we're actually seeing someone seriously use the Unreal Engine for the graphics side of thing, plug in their own physics, plug in their own engine under the hood basically, and making it work in something that's actually getting out the door. So I think the controversy, or people, kind of being a little bit skeptical, myself included, was somewhat justified. And I'm pleased to say that it works fine as this engine does in any other game. In other words, welcome to good old Unreal Engine Texture Streamtown, boys. All jokes aside, performance ain't bad, at least depending on how you measure it. I'm running an i7-6700K at 4.5 GHz with a GTX 1070, driving a single 2560 by 1440 monitor with most settings on high or higher. In single card testing and on a dry circuit during the daytime, I'm generally seeing frames around 75 FPS, somewhere thereabouts as a rough, surrounding area. Now, compared to a lot of other racing sims out there on the market, that seems very, very low. It's not uncommon in racing sims in a single car scenario like that where you're pulling well over 120 frames per second. At least on my system, I can speak to that because that's generally what happens. However, once you add stuff in, once you actually add AI opponents, cars out there on track, or you're racing in the rain, racing at night, doing doing both at the same time, the performance goes down very quickly. It's not a realistic benchmark, other than the fact that it is a benchmark to compare to. Once you add in cars, other opponents, you add in those things like the rain and the night that is typically very demanding on the system, that's where the performance changes for this game. Typically you add in rain, you add in night racing, the frame rate just goes down really, really quick. It's very demanding. Whereas this game handles it much better than what I've seen from any other game out there currently on the market already in its current early access. So while that 75 frames per second that I'm getting in the dry in a single car test doesn't seem like it has enough headroom to me on initial reaction, to seeing the frame rate counter in that scenario based off of previous experience with other titles out there, once I actually loaded everything up, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is actually surprisingly fine. I'm still getting 60 frames per second, plus on the settings that I'm running, which admittedly I could probably turn them down, squeeze more frame rate out, but I'm happy with it as it is, and really no complaints. There is one exception though, and that is the external replays. They chug a lot. I'm seeing frame rates down in the 30s for significant portions of the lap. This is just a product of all the effects that they have going on, and while yes, it does look pretty when the game is running at a significantly diminished frame rate, no. Hopefully this is something that will be addressed as part of optimization and improvements. I think it's just because there's a lot of effects going on at the same time, although I will say, if you remember in Assetto Corsa, the original one, you had the post-processing presets. It would be tremendous to see that type of feature make a comeback and be able to be changed on the fly, because then you could pretty easily address that yourself. Now on to how it looks. Well, obviously you're looking at it, of course, but a few other opinions. Can't even read my own script. Day-night transitions, nice and smooth, which is something I was a little bit worried about from the footage that we've seen. The lighting is overall well done, although again, I still think there's just too many effects going on at one time. And they also have that typical, that modern FPS, like, ooh, I got scratched goggles and everything, the dusty lens thing going on. They also have that going on, which is really annoying, especially at night with the virtual mirror turned on, because the virtual mirror will cause this dusty effect layer to also glare into your face, and it's just like very unnatural because it's lit from above where the virtual mirror is, and it's just really bizarre. Generally, I'm not a fan of those types of things. Some people like them, but yeah, kill it with fire. I'll also say it doesn't look particularly hugely amazing, like, whoa, so much better looking than everything out there from the cockpit, even when absolutely maxed. I'm not saying this game doesn't look good. I'm not saying it looks terrible or anything. But honestly, to me, from behind the cockpit and actual gameplay, it really reminds me a heck of a lot of race room racing experience from behind the wheel, only the graphics aren't as crisp. Now yes, the replays look absolutely freaking amazing and all this stuff and ooh, shiny, but behind the wheel where it actually counts most, it's not as big as a leap as perhaps expected. There's also one other thing regarding the graphics that I want to bring up because I have to bring up because I feel like it is that important. If you turn the effects option down in the menus, well, you turn it low enough, eventually the raindrops disappear from the windscreen in the rain, which obviously would provide you a massive advantage because, well, then you basically have clean windscreen all the time. There's no need for windshield wipers or anything like that, as well as your vision is perfectly left intact. You've never noticed just how poor the windscreen coverage of a windshield wiper on a Lamborghini GT3 car are until you've played this game, because apparently the Lamborghini GT3 car has absolutely crap windshield wiper coverage, but it does. So having a clean windscreen and not having to deal with all that stuff would be a huge advantage, and that is something that needs to be addressed before the game can fall into that more serious competitive side of things that eventually it's aimed at being. I also want to mention this game has some, quite frankly in my opinion, superior camera movement compared to the original Assetto Corsa. No more are you either bolted to the car in an incredibly rigid fashion, or alternatively stuck staring at the dashboard as you go up a gentle incline. It's almost like they have implemented the real head motion plugin from Assetto Corsa, which if you didn't use that, I don't know how you played Assetto Corsa, because it's basically mandatory in my opinion. It's that much better, but it's good to see that improvements were made in this regard. They've also added in a helmet cam, as typically seen in a lot of modern racing titles out there nowadays, that offers more movement and looking around and all that stuff that some people may like. Overall, I think they've made positive steps with the cameras and all that stuff. However, a couple of things. There's currently no pitch adjustment for the camera positioning, which is something that I expect will be addressed because it is very important. The helmet cam in particular, it feels like you're looking down like 25 feet in front of you, which is not what you should be doing at all. Please don't do that. Look up the road, not at the road. As well as the fact that there is currently no in-game options to tweak the way the camera is moving and reacting to bumps, the G-force, and stuff like that. So I expect both of those will hopefully be fixed up. That way you can change it and customize it more to your liking. But out of the box, I will say it is an improvement over the original Assetto Corsa. And that is the most graphics have ever been discussed on this channel. So this comes to the question of, how does she drive? Well, we can only take it as a sample size of literally one, because that is all that we have to sample. Anyways, this game drives like someone had some leftover Assetto Corsa, Project Cars 2, and Race Room Racing Experience lying around, and they're all like, but will it blend? And you know what? It does blend, and it's pretty good. In these early days here, it certainly doesn't feel like a radical departure from anything. It feels very, very similar to Assetto Corsa in particular, which is not surprising given that it basically is the same physics engine that's had some updates and been plugged into a new graphics engine, so no shocker there. In terms of the driving, disregarding the force feedback here, we'll come to that here in a moment. The biggest changes to me seem to be on braking. You can see and feel the car squirm around a little bit more. It's a little bit less composed. It's a little bit less straightforward. There's more of a feel for the limit of the adhesion under braking than the original Assetto Corsa, which I think is a great improvement, and it makes driving more satisfying in my opinion. As well as curb strikes. There's a couple of them that you're going to be doing, hopping curbs, cutting the course basically, but don't tell the FIA, track limits, yada yada yada. There's a couple of them throughout the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and they feel much better than Assetto Corsa, which had a tendency, in my opinion, to either just kind of smash into them and ramp off of them like the car has no weight, or alternatively just like hover over the top of them totally unaffected in a very weird fashion. It feels like there's more weight. It feels like there's actual suspension happening with these cars as you hit the curb, which is a positive improvement in both regards. And then we come to the force feedback, and this is kind of going to be a little bit tricky to explain. It's compared to Assetto Corsa. I always felt like with the Assetto Corsa, the steering wheel was very, very light. There wasn't a lot of force coming back through the steering wheel, as you're going down the straight or as you're in a braking zone. It was only once you really got the car loaded up, once you really got the tires loaded up, that the force through the force feedback, which set up properly, no clipping involved here, would finally start to transmit. You'd get big peak forces, but when you're well under the limit or whatever, you didn't have very strong forces coming back through the wheel. It didn't load up very quickly, I guess would be a way to put it. Whereas this game, it feels very much different under that level. That peak, the at the limit, of the grip, coming and going and all that stuff, it doesn't feel that different. It's when you're loading the car up into the corner that feels very different. When you're in a braking zone, the force feedback feels substantially different. It feels a lot heavier than what Assetto Corsa did. As you turn the car in, it feels slightly different. It hasn't really manifested itself in terms of like the driving itself has changed. I'm not fundamentally going about things in a different fashion, but the feel is loads different than the previous Assetto Corsa, which is why I say it kind of got that Project Cars 2 race room racing experience type of feel, because the force feedback does kind of feel similar to that sort of thing where the tires are loading up in a different fashion than what a lot of people will be accustomed to from Assetto Corsa. Let's move on over to the rain, which is, in my opinion, already the best out there. Yeah, I said that. We're like 4 days in, 5 days in, as I record this commentary, and I'm making that statement. Currently, there is no dynamic conditions. Those will be coming in a later update to the early access, but it still doesn't matter. I'll still stand by that, because no other racing sim, in my opinion, has put together the pieces needed to do it reasonable justice as Kunos has done here. If you select the storm setting, which is the wettest setting and pretty much a mirror of a flooded track, you best have your man pants on and have a clue what you're doing. It's crazy slippery. As in that long sweeping left-hander at the bottom of the GP circuit, that is really a straight in like every car in the dry, simple as can be, you just meander on over to the left, is just about the most terrifying corner around. Even with maximum TC and ABS, you better be paying attention, as the car is clearly affected by the puddles and hydroplaning on the track. And if you hit a puddle with your foot to the floor, even with the traction control on, there's a good chance you're going for a ride. And when I say you're going for a ride, you're going for a ride, because that grass, dear God, that grass, you have negative traction on that grass. You touch the grass, you're gone. Peace out, homie. Like, I'm seriously blown away by how much fun it is and how challenging it is. Generally, rain in racing sims is something that I'm like, yeah, that'd be really cool, but no one's really done a very good job with it yet, as well as it's something that's a huge development cost, and it's one of those things where I think it always is going to tend out to be one of those things where people do only races in the rain for a week, and then they are like, hey, you know what, it turns out that this is really freaking challenging and I can't handle it, so I'm going to go race in the dry, or at least I'll have more fun because I'm not spinning every corner. And that's basically that. I think the same thing's going to happen there, but it's a blast here in this game, I will say. This is the first game where racing in the rain actually feels proper freaking terrifying. Like, you'll be driving down the main straight at the Nürburgring GP circuit, you'll click up into 5th gear, you'll think you're humming along and you're fine, you got the downforce on, you're not getting wheel spin or anything like that, you think, and then suddenly you'll feel the force feedback go a little bit lighter. You'll see those blue LEDs light up on the dashboard display. You'll see the traction control, pop up in the bottom right-hand corner, on the throttle display if you have your HUD up. And you'll be all like, "Ooh, boy." And you'll be like, it's back out of it here. It's back out of it here. You'll be going through that long, sweeping left-hand turn, and you'll be on it, and you just think, okay, well, we'll be good here. And then next thing you know, a little bit of slip kicks in, and you're like, back out of it, easy does it, no sudden movements. That corner, the long right-hand sweeper, on the back straight before the chicane. You go around that, you'll think you're fine, you'll start to put the power into it, and you'll get the power in too hard in 4th or 5th gear, and you will spin like that because you got too hard into the power. Like, it is uncompromising. It is brutal, it is difficult, it is unashamed to be what it is, which is fantastic. And I know some people are going to say, R Factor 2, Project Cars 2. The rain in Project Cars 2 is a mild inconvenience at best. The puddles aren't nearly as deadly as they should be, and overall, the experience is a walk in the park. It's cake. It's not scary. It's not difficult. It's just a game where the puddles are really big and you kind of have to plan around it a little bit, but they really don't do much. As for R Factor 2, obviously you have the visual issues with the way rain is portrayed, and visuals are a very important thing to making rain what it is, because after all, if you don't have oodles and oodles of spray, then what is it? If you don't have the reflections from the track, and all that proper, what is it? Because that is very important to be able to judge what is going on there on the track. And then the fact that there's no puddles, no hydroplaning, that sort of thing going on, which is huge for selling it and making it proper freaking terrifying. I honestly am now more hyped for this feature than anything else that this game has to offer, because it has been such a blast. Turn the traction control off, turn the ABS off, flood in the track, turn it to storm, basically racing power boats is such a blast, as long as you're willing to accept the fact that it is a challenge and you will basically be tiptoeing around, but that's the fun, because it is so exciting, so brutal, and it is so knife edge as to whether or not you're even going to make it around the corner or if you're going to spin like a top. I freaking love it. Last thing I want to talk about in this video is the AI. It's pretty much exactly as is in Assetto Corsa, uncomfortably so. They still suffer really badly from that one corneritis. For example, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, the final section of the Mercedes arena, the tighter left-hand corner, as well as the cut back to the right, they're dreadfully slow through there. You'll either run over the top of them or you'll pass everybody there, because they are way slower than they need to be through there. Racing in the rain is totally entirely broken with the AI, because as soon as they get to the puddles, or shortly thereafter, they basically come to a complete stop on track, right in the middle of the track, and reset themselves back onto the racing line, if that makes any sense. At least that's what I like to imagine happening, sort of like a model train that's derailed, like the hand of God has placed them back on the rails, and then they carry on. It's not good. They still have that awkward thing where they race really far apart from one another, unnecessarily so, which just looks very bizarre out there on track. They're not compelling to race against. They're not exciting to race against. You still see that one car that blasts out way faster than all the others and wins every race by like 25 seconds, it seems, because that's the magically super fast car in that race. It's just not an exciting or good offline racing experience currently. Hopefully, because they are focusing on one specific car class, one specific car type, essentially, it will be better and refined compared to the previous Assetto Corsa offering, which had all these issues. I still will remain skeptical that this will be anything other than the game's weakness, but, well, let's have a little bit of hope, I guess, right? But wrapping things up here, there are other things I want to talk about, but I feel like that's where I want to end this video, and some of the other things I want to talk about in separate videos. For example, the licensing system, the rating system I want to talk about, because I think there's some things there. I'll probably also do one of those, hey, here's a bunch of things you all need to fix here, please fix videos, similar to what I did for Dirt Rally. But yeah, that's basically that. I really think that they have a very exciting groundwork laid, and it's just a matter of, will they be able to improve the areas that they need to improve, tie the pieces of the puzzle all together, and make this game what it could be, because I do think there is, again, a lot of potential there. It's just a question of whether or not Kunos can actually squeeze out that potential at this point. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.
is about to start. Hold your position until the green flag. Take it easy in turn 1. Alright, there is some rain in this session, so watch out for slippery curves and remember to brake early.